Food shrink nutritional psychiatrist. Man, we're talking plant protein. I got my buddy, Dr. Drew Ramsey, author of Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety.
It's good to see you.
Oh, good to see you too. So, well, first of all, for anybody that doesn't know, what is a nutritional psychiatrist?
So I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a physician, board certified in the practice and art of taking care of mental health. And so psychiatry is the division of medicine where we focus on that. Nutritional psychiatry is just using and thinking about food and nutrition, both in how we assess mental health, and then also what you can do in terms of your diet and what you eat to take care of your mental health and take care of your brain. Right,
which is completely outside of, I think, still nowadays, and hopefully you're changing it. People think psychiatrist and they think, okay, you're going to maybe sit on a couch for 20 or 30 minutes and then you're just going to get prescribed a pill.
I definitely put everyone on the couch. I love my couch, and I think everybody should spend a little time on the couch.
Sure.
I do prescribe medications sometimes and find them helpful to a lot of different people. I just think there's more to our mental health and our mental fitness than those two things. We've all got stuff that we can work out, and folks listening and watching this, sure. Psychotherapy is important. Medications can be helpful, but food's been a really missing part of food's been a very missing part of the mental health conversation. And so I hope my work helps change that. And that's really what we're trying to do in nutritional psychiatry. What I like about it, Joey, is it gives people things that we can do every day. You can look at your plate, full of colors, full of colorful plants, full of good plant protein, lentils, beans, nuts. That's a plate of brain food. You see that rainbow, and you know you're headed in the right direction in terms of taking care of your mental health and your brain health.
Yeah, and that is really key, because obviously talking helps, and obviously we need to talk to loved ones, friends, family, a professional such as yourself, but at the same time, often it's overlooked of, okay, maybe somebody's looking at sleep, maybe somebody's looking at exercise, but it's really nice for someone such as yourself that to say, what are you eating and how is that really affecting your mental clarity, your mental health? And I mean, even was it 1 out of 5 people suffer from sort of mental illness?
Everybody, especially now, is thinking about mental health, I hope, in new ways, which it isn't just that like 20% of us have mental health issues. It's that everybody's got a human brain, you know.
And well, I kind of have a human brain, right?
Yeah, you've got one, right? It's a good one, and it gives us all this creativity and fun and sexiness and all that, but it's also a little fragile. And I just find, like a lot of people, nobody really taught me how to take care of my brain. And when we think about how do we learn about nutrition, nobody was like, these are great foods to take care of your brain with. If you want to take care of your mental health, you want to optimize your mood, you want to be more energetic and creative, you want to do your best to insulate you from depression and anxiety, these would be the foods to eat. And that's really what I think now the science is pretty clear about in terms of the different types of food and also the research on why that is. And it's not just, one study. There's really this mountain of data now looking at how things like plants interact with our body and with our physiology to promote health or not. And that's really where these food recommendations come from.
So, I mean, why is it important to get more plants into your day? But I think we think of traditional sources of protein, obviously, which is something that's living and like an animal. But you get these plants and these greens, and you touched on it before, and legumes and all these things that are amazing for you. I mean, what is it specifically that these plants are really doing to help our brain?
There are a few ways that plants help the human brain. Plants are the main source of fiber in our diet, and we know more than 60% of Americans don't get enough fiber in their diet. And so when you're assessing a patient and you're thinking about people who are eating that standard American diet, and they just really need to kind of have a principle to revolve around, eating more fiber is a great one. The reason for that, fiber feeds the microbiome. That's all the bugs that live in our gut. And it sounds gross. And if you told me like 100 years ago, doctors, we've been killing bacteria forever. And so it's strange now we're telling people like, you should take it and you should feed those bacteria. And what the healthy bacteria in our gut eat are plants. So that's one reason, because the microbiome does so much in terms of modulating our overall energy balance, in terms of regulating inflammation. And also we increasingly understand, this is kind of wild new science, Joey, but the way that the microbiome is populated, the types of bacteria down there, has something to do with mood, something to do with your cognitive clarity. So there's this really new advances in terms of how plants and a plant-forward diet relate to gut health, and then that relates to overall improving mental health.
Yeah, and you actually made a post on your Instagram, which was great. It was talking about how the gut can actually affect your mood, and people that are a little bit more outgoing, they looked at like the overall gut health, and it found out that people that had overall gut health were a little bit more outgoing, just felt better.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it's also one of those parts of nutritional psychiatry. It's intuitively true for all of us. When you're feeling really good in your gut, you feel better. When you're feeling nauseous, or if you've got some acid reflux, or if you've got a little things that are running too fast or too slow, we don't feel well. And so taking care of the gut and eating foods that promote overall gut health, that's just a great move for mental health. Another way that the plants are involved, and I guess it's fun to talk to you about this. I think most people have this kind of wrong, and I did. And so most people, when we think about phytonutrients, they think about antioxidants, right? That phytonutrients are these plant-based antioxidants. And it's kind of interesting. When I first started researching food and mental health, the phytonutrients in plants, they're so much more than antioxidants, and they're not very powerful antioxidants. They're often really powerful, like antiviral or antibacterial agents. And then a lot of them really are directly recognized by the cells in our bodies. And there are these direct cellular and genetic effects by these molecules in plants, phytonutrients. It's really interesting. But there was a study that just came out in Nature that showed the way that, for example, something like blueberries and blackberries work. Everybody agrees those are brain foods. Right. But the way they work, it's not like they travel up to the brain. The way they work is actually through what they do to the gut. And so it's just what you're saying, that there are these effects in terms of how we feel and how we interact on the types of bacteria in our gut. And by eating more plants, at least right now, it feels like what the science says is eating more plants, eating more fermented foods. That's the way to really promote better overall gut health, and by proxy then, better mental health.
Yeah, so you've got these phytonutrients, you have the extra antioxidants. Obviously, it's more nutritionally dense for having these things. And then as well, it's going to make you feel better. It's going to help you sleep better. And this is all cyclical just by having that. I mean, you have somebody that's having a high sugar diet, or it's a standard SAD American diet, they're going to have a problem sleeping. There's going to be different things that are affecting your brain. So especially like sugar, that's something that people need to stay away from, correct, for as far as brain health?
Yeah, everybody knows to stay away the processed foods, stay away from sugar, stay away from things that have fake fats in them, or what I call industrial fats. It's pretty easy. In my opinion, if it's got more than one ingredient, you should hear alarm bells going off, like period. People are like, what are highly processed foods? And it's like, I think that folks shouldn't be confused anymore. If you're opening a package, if you're taking a scoop of a powder, like, that's processed food. Like, things that aren't processed are things you buy in farmers markets, grocery stores. They just have like one ingredient list: apples, salmon, celery, kale, oysters.
I mean, yeah, you get a package of blueberries. It should probably just say blueberries.
Doesn't even have an ingredients list. It's like, it's like, you don't have to ask, like, what's in this container? It's like blueberries.
it's see-through. All right, now talking to plants, we touched on this a little bit. People think that plants don't have protein, but why specifically do we need protein, for our body, for our brain? And then what sources, I know this is a two-part question here, what sources of plants do you go to for people for sources of plant protein?
It's strange that people don't think that plants have protein, because there are vegetarians and vegans around the world who do pretty well on just plants. The issue is that plants don't have complete proteins, and so that's just really confused people. That's why cultures that relied on plants always combine them. And so proteins are important because proteins break down in our body into amino acids, and amino acids are then used as the basis for really all of the proteins you build and all of your major mood regulating neurotransmitters. So you take something like tryptophan, that's an amino acid. You find it in lots of things. You find a lot of it in asparagus, for example, and also in pumpkin seeds. Your body takes that and makes serotonin out of it using a little touch of iron and a few other things thrown in. So protein is really a fundamental and essential part of a human diet. If you are not getting enough protein, you're hungry all the time, because your brain is just keeping track, and your brain is really keeping track of a couple of things. is there enough protein in this diet? So I've got enough amino acids. Is there some fat in this diet? Those are the main hunger signals. And then also one of the reasons we recommend plants and fiber is that fiber also is, it takes up space and fills you up. My favorite plant, proteins, yes, my favorite, sorry, lentils. Just like, that's just my answer, lentils.
Dude, I just love lentils. Love lentils, like a lentil soup. The first time I ever tried a lentil soup, you know this, my wife's family is Greek, and like, oh, here's a lentil soup. I'm like, where's the rest? Like, no, this is a meal, it's lentil soup. And I had this thing. Man, I was so full, I took it down and I ate way too fast. And yes, we should slow down and we should enjoy our food and help the digestive process, right? Slow it down, Doc. Slow it down. But man, I felt so full and I felt amazing.
The lentils are amazing. It's that great trifecta. It brings protein, it brings fiber, and it brings a lot of brain density, brain nutrient density, in the sense that it's one of the top sources of folate, vitamin B9. And vitamin B9 is one of those, like, everyone agrees. If you don't have enough vitamin B9, you have an increased risk of depression. So it's a great source of plant-based protein. I also like beans. Probably once a week in our house, we're eating some form of rice and beans or bean tacos. I just really am a big fan of beans. But I think it's one of those really easy plant-based meals that I'd recommend almost like everybody start incorporating on a regular basis. So yeah, beans, some salsa, some avocado, that's great brain food.
Yeah, I mean, I used to do a lot of asparagus and beans. It filled me up, and then people don't realize that a bunch of asparagus is about 15 grams of protein. So you just start adding that up, and then you also have the prebiotics. So a lot of people are missing out on this, and of course it's nice to be able to have something where if you're bodybuilder, you can get some protein powder, based from plant-based, and you talked about not complete, but a lot of these things now, pea, brown rice, there's a bunch of mixture of these different protein powders. So if somebody isn't getting a compilation or a wide variety of their diet, what is their suggestion? How do you get them to start incorporating more plants into their life that is going to be good? Because your standard American diet is basically, it's beige and it's fried, and my southern Missouri family, love you guys to death, but it's not healthy. So what's the first step?
The first steps, I think, are understanding why people don't eat plants. And some of it's things like you're mentioning, that they don't think that there's protein or vitamins or nutrients in plants. Other times it's because people's experience with eating plants, they're not filled up. They're used to getting more satiation from either meat products or from having more protein in their diet. So it's actually one of the things about eating more plants that I find a lot of people like, is that you can just eat a lot more. I mean, I'm never like portion controlling, because like, to eat all the cabbage you want, like go crazy, like eat all the broccoli you want. I think that understanding the barriers to people eating more plants, and that ranges, oftentimes it's about preparation, it's about valuing the plants and valuing the self. I think there's some way that diet culture combined with mild depression leads a lot of people to eat really poorly as a way to punish themselves. And it kind of lives in this realm of, it's easier, it's less expensive, I like it and I deserve it because, it tastes so good. And I just really ask people to challenge that, because those are all horrible reasons to destroy your brain health by eating lots of awful processed food. I think also it's easy, at least I find it really easy, to do a lot of plants in my diet simply using olive oil in my oven. And I chop up pretty much any vegetable, pour olive oil on it, like shake it around in a sheet pan, throw it in there. It comes out 20, 30 minutes later, delicious. My kids eat it, everyone eats it.
That's what the Greeks call brième. So it's like sweet potato and tomatoes and all sorts of, just chop it up, olive oil, some salt, pepper, 20, 30 minutes in a broiler, and it's amazing.
Brième, right? And the Greek diet is right at the center of the Mediterranean diet. So, there's a reason for that. Right. It's easy, it's inexpensive. And I think part of people doing a better job with plants is attacking those myths and misconceptions. And really then getting very personal and very focused. It's in some ways what we do in nutritional psychiatry is, sure, everybody knows they should be eating more plants. Everyone knows they should be eating more fiber. But I'm really curious as a clinician, like, what's in your way? And what is the barrier? Are there things you don't like? Have you had bad experiences? Are you embarrassed? Do you just not ever go to the grocery store? Have you never been to a farmer's market? Like what is underneath your not consuming more plants? And then to start chipping away just by adding a few. And I think it's one of the best experiences for me as an eater is the discovery of new foods. And so often that's new plants. Whether it's the sunflower sprouts that I'm just gorging on this summer that 5 years ago I'd never eaten, or the purslane, which was always popping up in my garden, but I didn't know until recently that it's such an amazing superstar leafy green. So there's always more to learn when it comes to plants, and that's one of the reasons I like eating them so much.
One more question. Now, people who are suffering with some sort of, mental illness, what would your advice for them to be to really start? Obviously, like we touched on a lot of the food that they need to be having, but what is that first step for mental illness besides like wanting to have more plants? What should they do?
I think if you're struggling with your mental health, it's good to find some people of inspiration. I think Joey, you're one of them, who have been open about their challenges with mental health, or in Joey's case is depression, and is on the other side of it. Because I just find that in my own personal journey really inspiring and helpful. I think in terms of eating for better mental health, I think learning the basics is the first step. Because I think so often people jump to like which food, and in my new book, I have a list of power players, because I think we do need a couple foods to focus on. But I think what's so important is for people to take a step back and examine what are your values as an eater? And what are the ways that you're thinking you're feeding your brain health and your mental health? And then to learn some fundamental principles of how to do that. Because I think that's a step I really needed to take as a physician who takes care of brains for a living, but also as an eater myself. And it really shifted how I eat. I was a low-fat vegetarian. I didn't eat any seafood, didn't eat any meat. And I really have shifted the number and types of plants that I consume, but also the ways that I consume other food categories. And I think that step and that reflection is really what people should do. Another, I think, great first step is to partner with somebody, whether that is a mental health professional like myself, or a coach, or a trainer, or your pastor. But the faster you tell somebody, hey, I'm not doing so well with my mental health, and you're talking about it and you're sharing it with somebody, that means you're getting better. Because when we really don't do well with our mental health, and Joey, I'm sure you can attest to that, it's when we keep it all to ourselves and we don't share how we're doing.
Yeah, you're right. And I say this often, the people that often are in the light often have the most darkness, because they're just having this light shine on them all the time. So we all struggle with that, and it's the ones that have to feel like they have to pretend that things are not good and things are or things are good all the time and I never have any problems. Like that's wrong. Like I have all sorts of problems, and I never say my depression is gone. I feel like it kind of goes in remission a little bit, and sometimes it pops its head up. But doing these things and having experts such as yourself, and telling my wife, or being aware of my son when I'm not present, and everything else, I think that's going to help everybody. And I just appreciate you and everything that you're doing. Obviously, talk therapy is huge, but taking care of our body and our mind by just putting some good plants in our belly and being eaters, man, I really appreciate that. Make sure people can find you, especially get your book, How to Eat and Beat Depression. But where else can people find you?
For sure. Everybody, I'm Drew Ramsey, MD. You can find me on Instagram. My website's drewramseymd.com. I've got some fun downloads of my surprising antidepressant foods, and also some other resources, and a great clinical team if anybody needs help in terms of getting some coaching or help for their mental health. And Joey, thanks. It's great to see you, and I hope everybody feels excited about it. And if I'd say anything, I'd like to just leave with a prescription.
Okay, yeah.
But I think this week, from wherever you see this video, whenever that is, in space and time, the internet has connected us. I hope that you in the next week will eat one new plant and eat some lentils.
There you go. I like it. We'll end there. Thank you so much, my friend. I truly appreciate it.
Take care, Joey. You have a good one. See you soon.
Cheers.